Baseball Network. We have our final episode here on the Bears Winter League. Obviously, 10 weeks, a lot of stuff to talk about. Last week we did our award show, but today I want to talk about some guys who maybe a little bit on the sleeper side. You know, guys who definitely didn't have enough volume or didn't have enough stats to be considered all-stars, but some guys who I think really impressed the three of us here. We got 2 guys each, so 6 guys that we want to talk about today who I think put up some really sleeper performances that I think will translate well into the spring and summer season. So let's go ahead and get things started here with you, Bernie. A guy that I think really came on in the later half of the season, definitely put up some really good at-bats, and although he didn't necessarily have the stats to kind of showcase how good he was, I think the quality of at-bats against the type of pitching he was facing was very impressive. Bernie, tell me about your first sleeper here, Jacob Lowry.
Yeah, I got to watch this guy a lot in the 12-13U league. And look, as the season went on, this guy just took better and better at bats. I thought when he first got there in the BWL that he was just straight overmatched, right? But then as the season went on, right, he took all at bats against ZZ Garcia in the latter half of the season where he looked like he could compete, right? Yeah, he even got a hit off him. And just to go, like with that and this kid's work ethic I've seen in practice has been the outfield lately. He works really hard. He's turned himself to actually do a really good outfielder really quickly. The work I see him put in pitching, I think that this guy has gotten better in such a short amount of time that he can continue to do that over the course of the year.
Yeah, and even outside of just the at-bats, some of the small stuff like he had to courtesy run a lot and doing smart things on the bases and making sure that he was putting himself, in positions to be a contributor, even when he wasn't getting 3-4 bats a game. So I thought that was really impressive. KJ, I know this is Bernie's sleeper, but you get to coach this guy kind of in the regular season. He's your age. Give me your thoughts about Jacob Lowry, specifically what he did in the Bears Winter League.
I thought he did his job. And he exceeded my expectations for him. I think everyone's first year in the BWL, they can kind of not adjust to it greatly, but I think Jacob, he quickly adjusted, and he showed that he can hang around some of the big-time players. So I think it was a great last 5 weeks for Jacob of the BWL season. I think he is starting himself off here right before the start of spring in a good spot.
Yeah, 100%. I think this guy definitely turned a lot of heads among everybody that got to see him play. And I think anybody who keeps track of guys who start showing these good tendencies, I think are going to see Jacob Lowry have a really nice season here. I'll go next here with my guy, John Armbruster. I think this guy really turned a lot of heads over the latter half of the season after he got picked up. This guy just continually took great at-bats against 15U pitchers, 14U pitchers, didn't really matter. Seemed like Johnny A was continuing to hit the ball hard. And one thing I've mentioned, I think, on BBN After Dark, but this is the first time I'll get to do it here, John Armbruster has had 3 consecutive seasons that his extra base hit rate has gone up and his strikeout rate has gone down. And if you look historically in the Bears, guys who are able to do that where they continuously increase that extra base hit rate and continuously lower their strikeout rate, those guys end up becoming very good contributors. And John Armbruster, I think we're starting to see some of that breakout potential he had in the BWL, especially in the second half. This guy, I think, defensively has really kind of ironed up his game. And KJ, once again, I know this isn't your sleeper, but I know you've gotten a chance to work with this guy a little bit at first base. Give me your thoughts on John Armbruster, specifically on the defensive side of the ball and how you see he's grown over the past 2 years.
Yeah, I think, before John, was a guy you put there and he could hurt you by making, silly mistakes over there. And I don't think he's that guy anymore. I think there's been multiple weeks where he's been the best defensive first baseman over there when I'm working with him. He's pretty smooth over there, and I think not only is he not going to hurt you this year, I think he's going to help you defensively.
Yeah, 100%. KJ, speaking of first baseman, your first sleeper here, a guy who I think, when he first joined the Bears was a top 10 prospect, came into last year with a lot of hype, and although he had some moments where he delivered, I think the overall kind of product of this guy was maybe a little bit underwhelming, but he had a really nice BWL season. Even though the stats may have not been amazing, I think he did some really encouraging things, and that is Evan Little. KJ, this guy, I think, when he was in B-League, was one of the scariest hitters on the team. And even when he was in A-League, when I saw him coming off the bench for that team, he was a scary hitter to face always. Give me your thoughts on Evan Little's BWL season.
Yeah, I thought Evans' at-bats matured a lot towards the second half of the BWL, especially when he got into the B-League. I think in the first half, the power was always imminent. He was always, when he hit the ball, it was going to far ways. But I think, in the first half, what I noticed a lot, he's swinging a lot of curveballs. A lot of curveballs in the dirt and taking fastballs. And I think once he got moved down to the B League, he got out of that approach, and he ended up on the A League at the end of the year and had a really good couple weeks to end it. So I thought his approach cleaned up a lot. The power's always been there, but I think he was jumping on fastballs more. He was being on time for them, and he started laying off those curveballs in the dirt that pitchers were starting him off with.
Yeah, I'm really excited to see what this guy can do this season. Kind of his second full year with the Bears. Obviously, he joined, I believe, in the fall of 2022. So he had last year a full year, going into his second full year here. And I think, Evan, some really encouraging signs for him to really kind of be that breakout player. Bernie, we're going to swing back here to you and go a little bit older here with a guy in Tim Kilcoyne Ball. This is a guy who's been around the Bears for a while, but really kind of getting his first real look at that top 18U team. I know Rob has said some really good things about him, and although he didn't necessarily have big offensive numbers, I think what he was able to do is kind of a role player, which in truth, that's probably the role he's going to play if he is on that H.U. Floyd team. I thought was really impressive. Bernie, I know you've coached this guy before. Give me your thoughts on Tim Kilcoyne Ball.
Yeah, I got to coach this guy for 1 year last summer. And look, this guy can help your team in just so many different ways, right? At bats, he's going to give you a good at bat every time, right? He's not going to go up there and hit, 10 home runs or like that, but he's going to put the ball in play, and he's going to take good at bats for you. Defensively, he can play basically an above average anywhere you want. Maybe not elite, but above average infielder and outfielder. I mean, anywhere you could possibly think of. And on the bases, like he showcased the BWL, he's a very good base runner, smart on the bases. So going into 2024, if he makes the 18 Floyd roster, right, I know Rob's kind of implied it a little bit. He is a great role player for that team, will contribute in a lot of different ways.
Yeah, I think this is a guy who, especially for Rob, has turned his head for sure. And, just the type of game he plays. He plays really hard. And like you said, Bernie, that H.U. Floyd team is kind of looking for those role players. And Tim, a great base runner, a guy who can play basically anywhere on the field and play it well. And a guy who I think, although he's not going to hit for a ton of power, maybe even not necessarily a high batting average, but I think he's going to get on base and put up good enough at bats to be a contributor off the bench. Going into my second player here, I'm going to go with Hunter Finley. This is a guy who has put in a ton of work in his game, and I want to talk about him both on the pitching side and the offensive side, starting with the pitching. I think Hunter Finley really kind of overperformed my expectations. I knew he was going to be a guy who was going to throw a lot of strikes, but first of all, the velocity. I mean, Hunter is right now, a little bit on the smaller side. He's very skinny and a guy who I think is going to grow into that body over the next year or two. But he throws hard for his size. And I think he's a guy who, when teams see him warm up, maybe they're going to be licking their lips a little bit, that it's going to be BP fastballs. But I think when they get in the box, it's going to get on them quick, and he's got off speed to go with it. So I think Hunter Finley, he's not just going to be that pitching machine, safe strike thrower. I think he showed this BWL season, especially facing these very good 13U hitters. I think he showed he can be, a lot more than that. He can be very effective while throwing strikes. And then on the offensive side, he didn't put up a lot of stats offensively, but I think the quality of his at-bats just got better the entire season. He found ways to get on base, and again, it wasn't necessarily just go up there, take 6 pitches, and hope you walk. He was being aggressive at balls in the strike zone and laying off balls outside of it. So I think Hunter Finley, he's a guy who, he's going to get the opportunity to contribute offensively, but I think his defense and his pitching is going to make him a worthwhile player for that Burnsville squad. Bernie, very quickly here, Hunter Finley, a guy who I know has really impressed you with his work ethic. Give me your thoughts on Hunter's BWL season going into 2024.
Yeah, I think Hunter was very productive in BWL, right? Great base runner. I thought he took some really good at-bats, but just the offseason this kid's had, right? I mean, you talk about the hardest workers at the 12U age. I mean, Hunter's got to be the top 3 for me for that. So, yeah, this kid's put a lot of effort in, man, and I think he's going to have a good 2024.
Yeah, definitely excited to see what Hunter Finley continues to develop here. And KJ, your second player and the last one we're going to talk about today is Jacob Villette. This guy was on the Throwbacks B team, and I believe he didn't even get drafted. He got picked up early in the season, like week 2 or 3, and just kind of needed another role player for that team. And boy, did he deliver. Threw strikes, played good defense, and put up really good at-bats. KJ, I know this is a guy that you've talked very highly of over the course of the BWL. Give me your thoughts on Jacob Villette's BWL season.
Yeah, I think typically I'm more of a fan of, the bigger, big kids. But Jacob's made a big fan out of me this winter. Obviously, I didn't draft him, and no one drafted him. He ended up picking up, but he made me kick myself all year for not picking him up. I mean, this guy has legit power. For his size, he was launching balls, and the ball just pops off his bat a little differently. He's great at first base. He's never going to hurt you there. He came in multiple tough situations on the mound and got them out of a lot of jams. And, I think he was a scary hitter for us to face in that B-League team. So I think Jacob is due for a big season. I think he can get his nose into the mix of the first base opening for the top team. And if not, I think, he's going to fit in well on a second team and be a key player.
Yeah, he's the type of guy that I think, kind of like we said with a Tim Kilcoyne Ball or even, a Jacob Lowry to an extent, he's a guy who, if he's on your top team as a role player, he's going to play good defense wherever you put him, probably going to be second, first, or third, but any of those three positions, he's going to play very solid defense. He's going to be able to contribute on the mound, especially out of the bullpen. He's going to be able to throw strikes for you and get hitters out. And at the plate, he's going to put up good at-bats. Jacob has always been a guy who has, a good plate discipline as well as some power upside. And I think that is, very attractive to be on that top team. So I think Jacob Villette proved a lot this offseason, coming off of maybe a little bit of a down 2023 for Jacob. I think he showed a lot in this offseason, and I think he's primed for a really, really good bounce back 2024. So that's going to do it for this episode of the Bears Baseball Network. We have a lot planned for the month of March as we get hyped for the 2024 Bears season. But that's going to do it for the BWL content, and we'll talk to y'all next